Hello everybody and welcome back to Rebellious Menstruation. This is a review of Last Night at the Telegraph Club by Melinda. And this story is set in early 1950 San Francisco amongst the Chinese American community there, and the main character in this book is this 17-year-old Lily Hugh. Could be pronouncing that wrong. And her kind of burgeoning relationship with a girl called Kath Miller. And the Telegraph in club in question is this lesbian club with drag king performance. So this is a very well written book. I think I mentioned in one of my previous reviews that I like books when they're not just about coming out. But this is solidly set in a coming out story, but in a way that is about the context of her life. So Lily is very much ensconced in the Chinese community, and as are her friends. And Lily and her friends are quite often the first generation Chinese. Both of Lily's parents are from China, and her father's a doctor, and her mother also works, and she has two younger brothers, and they all live in an apartment. She kind of lives, her quote-unquote bedroom is like this kind of blocked off part of the living room, because she's the eldest and the only girl. Her two brothers share a room, and then there's obviously her parents. So she's quite studious. She has a very much an interest in working in science and laboratory, and that's where she's got high grades. She goes to school, she works. She's very studious and well behaved and respectful and everything that you possibly expect from good immigrant family who has been raised in America. So her parents are very studious and responsible, and so that's how they've kind of raised her to be as well. And she's also very insulated in this Chinese community and Chinese restaurants and Chinese friends, and of course this is also the 50s, where there's much talk of it's just the post-war. There's McCarthyism going on. At several points in the book, her father and her parents get pulled aside due to them trying to find Chinese communists. And of course, as much of a illusionary threat as this was, China was post-revolution as well. This is post-war. There are significant political events that are very, very current in the period of this book, that are affecting the way people are treating the Chinese community. It's less important that she is American and more important that she is ethnically Chinese. It is more important that her parents are Chinese nationals. Well, I think both of her parents are American citizens, but it's more important that they're Chinese and of Chinese birth than it is that they're American now, and that they choose to work in America. So it's kind of very much they are treated like outsiders, they are treated like foreigners, they are treated like they do not belong. And of course, for Lily's kind of insulated world, it doesn't matter as much, because she just lives her life. She goes to school, she hangs out with her probably closest friend, and remains the quite studious person that she is. The texture of this book is very, very good, because the texture gives Lily, who is quite a quiet person, it's alive around her in how she works with its world. But she is also very much a follower. And when she kind of gets this kind of very quiet attraction to women, in particular Kath, and recognises this really in and of herself, kind of before Kath turns up, she's very much in this situation where she has kind of been collecting pictures, been reading books in like the newsagent that have, you know, the kind of like those salacious pulp novels. The Price of Salt by Patricia Highsmith is probably a really good example of these kind of salacious pulp novels. The Price of Salt, or Carol as it became known, or it should have been known, is one of the few ones that had a happy ending, because most of them were published on the basis they had a bad ending for these women. But she reads these books, or has read this book, so she's starting to kind of push against this burgeoning sexuality in a way that is taking her away from her community, the community that she was raised in, towards her own community and towards the community of her choice. So her identification for herself isn't one of her parents, it's one that she is growing into, and it's really, really noticeable that she hasn't really questioned where she's been from before. She doesn't realise the political danger that her parents are in, and to a lesser extent her and her brothers, but she doesn't understand all of this kind of at the start, and she's 16, 17, so she's young enough to be insulated, but old enough to possibly understand the consequences, but doesn't. And she's really young enough not to necessarily have questioned the lack of boyfriend or the lack of desire for a boyfriend, but old enough to really be pushing into the end of where she's discovering that she is. And so she starts sneaking out at night. She starts going to the Telegraph club. They go several times. They meet other lesbians at these bars, obviously. And she starts really learning a lot of the terminology that you get when you join a community for the first time. Because the queer community in general has language that it uses and yet language that it utilises. And this can be in general, this can also be localised to particular countries. But she learns butchers and femmes and all of these types of subtle little differences in the culture that she didn't notice, that she didn't have a language for before. And she also doesn't recognise or realise the danger in going to this type of club, because she's, again, for the first time, pushing boundaries and pushing those boundaries within herself. And her sneaking out and her going to this club, she doesn't necessarily think of the danger about going to the club. She thinks about the danger of her getting caught from her parents. And that's kind of the folly, is her expectation is not the legal scariness of it, but the emotional scariness of it. And during this time, she's having issues with her best friend, the friend that she's grown up with, the friend that she has worked in her family's restaurant, the friend that she's always been around, because Lily has been such a quiet, introverted person. Well, not introverted is the wrong word, probably shy. Just a quiet person. That hasn't pushed any boundaries before, whereas Shirley's always pushed those boundaries. And Shirley's pushed into things that she's wanted far quicker. And Lily's just kind of gone along with it. And the consequence of this is when Lily starts pushing for herself, Shirley's just reacts really badly. And then Shirley reacts to her friend leaving her, because she's always had a backup support. And she's always had a follower as a leader. But Lily doesn't stand down because she doesn't need to. Lily at this point has gone far enough along the journey to realise that Shirley's and hers life are going to be vastly different. And part of that is because she's making really an irrevocable choice here. That her life is not inside this insulated community, it's within a other community. She's othered herself from any other society, and it's kind of interesting to see that development. So it has an interesting epilogue to this. She does that. The specific last night at the Telegraph Club in question is when it does get raided, and her and Kath get separated in this night. She makes her way back home because she can't find Kath. In all of this situation, it was obviously during a raid. It can be quite, discombobulating. Lots of stuff happens at once. So she ends up at home, and Shirley kind of turns up and kind of confronts her because of course they live in this insulated community that Shirley gets told somebody saw her. And somebody saw her making her way home. Somebody saw her spilling out of this club. Somebody found her scarf. Shirley returns the scarf and basically says, hey, stop what you're doing. And of course, Lily makes the decision quite rapidly, pretty well much straight away, that she goes and tells her parents. Not out of guilt, not out of shame, but out of finally breaking free from the expectations of her life. She doesn't want those expectations in her life. She doesn't want Lily's Lily doesn't want Shirley's complications. Shirley made subtle threats during their conversation, and Lily just was by that point having none of it. And Lily's just like kind of really quite confrontationally snaps the cord between her kind of old life and her new life that she wants. This, of course, has consequences and ramifications, and the consequences for Lily is that her parents send her to live with her aunt, like within 24 hours of them finding out, in Sacramento. Sacramento? It might not have been Sacramento, it might have been another place that I'm misremembering. It's in California at least. I don't think it's Sacramento, actually. Anyway, we can actually just probably look. I know it is a place in here that she gets sent away with her aunt. And so her aunt and uncle take her. Pasadena, that's it. Sorry, my apologies. Pasadena. So to finish out her year 12. So her aunt and uncle take her away. And part of her parents' reasoning is the usual arguments that most people have with queer people. You won't be normal, you won't live a normal life, you won't have all of these things that straight people have. Well, that's because straight people make legislation against queer people, but also her father makes a point of, we're already under investigation because we're Chinese. We don't need more salacious illegal activity in this house than just existing as Chinese people. And so Shirley does. So her kind of relationship with Shirley is probably irrecoverably broken, and her relationship with her parents is kind of left a little bit unknowingly at the end, because they do send her away, but they send her away for their safety and her own. And it's a very textured book that I did really, really like. So thank you for watching. Enjoy your morning, afternoon, or evening, depending, of course, where you are in the day. And I will catch up with you all next video. Bye, everyone.